Welcome to the EMEA webinar series. Our series is called There is no new normal, for reasons that will become very apparent very shortly. Welcome everybody. My name is Chris Babiodi. I'm the Managing Director of the EMEA across the EMEA region. Delighted to have you with us today as we take us through our panel and our WARC annual report that we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm just going to take a few minutes whilst we have some people join us, just to let those of you who aren't familiar with us as an MMA, just who we are and what we do and how we do it. So we're a global industry association, 15 countries, as you can see there, marketer-led with media agencies, technology suppliers and providers and ad networks and agencies. And we're serving the chief marketeer and their team, focusing on measurement, on marketer organizational development, inspiration and advocacy. And we're all about enabling marketers to drive innovation and enduring business value in a mobile connected world. You'll probably be able to see a slide now with a number of logos on. It's just a smattering of the 800 plus member companies we have in our organization, all of whom have a significant number of benefits of being members with us, whether that be learning, insights, tools, exposure, and most importantly, we're an organization that's focused on shaping the future of marketing. In fact, the future of modern marketing. So welcome today to our presentation to the MMA and to our There Is No New Normal webinar series. Today's particular webinar, if you could move on one slide, is in conjunction with WARC. Every year for the last 4 or 5 years, as I've said, we've done an annual report, which is really trying to understand about mobile marketing across the EMEA region. We carried this out earlier this year, and we're here today not only to share some highlights from those results, but also to talk from a marketer and an agency perspective as to what are the implications, what are the learnings, and what does it mean for all of us, which we'll share with you today. So I'm delighted, next slide, if we could have for our panel. Here's what you need to know. So our panel today is Amy, it's Sandra, and it's Kate. They'll just introduce themselves, and then we'll get down and into all the details. Amy.
Hi everyone, so yeah, I'm Amy Rogers. I am the Managing Editor of Research and Rankings at WARC. If you don't know WARC, we are a publisher of marketing effectiveness content. I lead on research both internally and with partners like the MMA, and I also lead our rankings for creativity, media and effectiveness.
Cool. So I'm Sandra McDill. I'm the Global Digital Media Strategy Director at GSK Consumer Healthcare, and I look after all of the digital media channels globally. So hot off the press, I'm actually changing roles, and it's not on LinkedIn yet, so therefore it's obviously not official and therefore not on this slide, but I can tell you that I'm going to actually be heading up the new global content production ecosystem, which is our new end-to-end model with Publicis and Tag, that's going to close the loop on content production and how that links in at the end with media performance. So I'm just getting started in that role at the moment, which is why it's not been announced, but I've been at GSK for 2.5 years, and prior to that I was agency and tech side.
Amazing. Congratulations, Sandra, on the new role. My name is Kate Walkham. I'm coming to you from quarantine in London. I'm a global account director at media agency International, and I work across several global, regional and local brands, some of which include Coca-Cola, Just Eat food delivery. And in past lives, I've worked on J&J and GoPro as well, to name a few. My role is essentially to help formulate and drive global strategy and transformation agendas that are integral to driving the growth for our clients and really future-proofing their business and really making sure, I think, that their imperatives become a reality on ground, particularly in our local markets. So thanks for having me here today, Chris, and happy to be here.
Great, you're welcome, all three of you, very welcome, and congratulations, Sandra, to the new role. Eager to find out some more on that one when we can. So let's just put into perspective what we're going to cover today in terms of our agenda. So this introduction will be over shortly, and then Amy's going to share just some insights from the report, some key takeaways, and sort of what was the makeup of the report. And when she's finished that, we're going to share some individual charts from the report. And then I'm going to ask Sandra 2 or 3 questions, and then I'm going to ask Kate 2 or 3 questions. So we get a marketeer's perspective and we get an agency perspective on some of the findings. And then we've got a couple more questions that we'll ask after that, so that we can continue the discussion. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Zoom and everything else. There is an audience question and answer. So if there is something that you would like us to ask our esteemed panel, then please put it in there. We're planning really to do it towards the end of this broadcast, but feel free to put a question in at any time that works for you. And if there's one of our panel that you would particularly like to answer it, then please, just notify that. Otherwise, we'll just open it to the full panel. Okay, so without further ado, I'm delighted again to give Amy the opportunity to share some of the findings from the survey for this year, and then we'll get well into that discussion. So Amy, over to you.
Thanks. So this is a survey, as Chris said, that we've been running since 2016 with the MMA in EMEA. And each year we survey both Walk subscribers and MMA members and ask them about their current and planned use of mobile in their marketing strategies. So if you just move on to the next slide, it shows some of the demographics. So this year, 596 marketers responded to our survey. As you can see from this chart, they were mostly in Europe, and then with just over a quarter from the Middle East and Africa. If you go to the next slide. This shows where those 596 respondents came from in terms of company type. As you can see, they come from quite a broad range of company types. So we have agencies responding, and then also advertisers, tech vendors, and some media owners as well. So throughout the survey, some questions were asked of all these respondents. Some of them were just to the advertisers, and then some were worded so that agencies would answer with their typical client in mind. If you move on to the next slide. This final slide on demographics shows the seniority of those responding. So the majority are at manager level and above, and then 33% you can see there at that director or senior director level. So if you move on to the next slide, I'm just going to briefly run through some of the main takeaways of the research, and then we'll dig into some of the findings in a bit more detail. Next slide. So these are the takeaways. This year has obviously been a strange one, to put it lightly, as we all know, due to COVID-19. And that's obviously had a big impact on budgets across the board. So widespread marketing budget decreases have been reported. But this research and also Walk's own ad spend data have indicated that mobile has been one of the most resilient channels throughout the pandemic. People have spent more time online, both for shopping, for social purposes, keeping in touch with friends and family. So over the time that we've carried out this research with the MMA, mobile's gone from being quite a distinct channel to very much the core of digital marketing strategies. So now digital and mobile are pretty synonymous. And so over that time, we've seen big increases in budget allocation to mobile. And this year, half of our respondents are allocating more than a quarter of their budget to mobile marketing. And our ad spend data that I referred to shows it's the fastest growing media. So like I said at the start, COVID's had an inevitable impact. And we fielded this survey just after the peak in many EMEA countries. So we asked how their expectations of budget changes have been impacted by the outbreak. Prior to COVID, 66% were expecting their budgets to rise over the next year. And then post-COVID, only 39% expected it to rise. So it definitely has had an impact, but we found that mobile's definitely been more resilient than other channels to the pandemic. The second takeaway there is that mobile is and will continue to be a key channel for marketers. So the research found that on average, 50% of mobile budgets are being allocated to mobile video, and the growth in consumption of mobile video is seen as one of the most significant consumer behaviours impacting marketing for 2020. So in particular, advertising via mobile video will continue to increase in importance in the coming year. So things like apps like TikTok gaining momentum with advertisers. So that was a big trend we found from the research. The third takeaway is that we found the marketers are really thinking mobile first when it comes to creating content. So in prior years, we've had more of a kind of leaders and laggards type split in respondents, but this year found that 3/4 of respondents are considering things like ad length and ad design when it comes to creating content for mobile. And the growth of e-commerce, particularly this year, driven by COVID, has really driven those developments in mobile-based branded content and shoppable ads and things like that. And we also found mobile gaming is a big trend. It's generally a trend in advertising at the moment, and expected to grow further as advances in 5G provide that leap in performance that the streaming and gaming really require. And our respondents to this research are really seeing the future opportunity in that. And then the final takeaway is to do with programmatic. So programmatic trade is driving mobile display advertising strength. This research found that mobile display advertising is currently used in 1/4 of all campaigns, and it's been the biggest focus for almost half of marketing professionals this year. This has really been fueled by that boom in programmatic trade. Walk data shows that paid search and mobile display now account for almost all of the global mobile ad investment. And respondents to this survey said they were using mobile display in 1/4 of all their campaigns. So that's my final key takeaway, and we'll dive into those in a bit more detail as we go through the webinar. We go to the next slide.
Great, thanks for that, Amy. That's insightful. And for those of you on the call, we normally get a question about, will there be a copy of this presentation? Yes, we're recording it, and so we will be able to share that. We will put it live on our global website, as well as YouTube and other channels. And the actual report itself, where Amy just gave us some high-level takeaways there. The actual report itself is available on our website. We've got the URL toward the end of this discussion, which I'll share with you as well, so you can really dig deep and dig into them there. So now we're going to move on to some of the findings from the report in a little more detail, as Amy said. And again, I'll ask Sandra from GSK some questions just around some of those findings. So we're going to take the sort of generic report and bring it down to what does it mean for a marketer, what does it mean for GSK, and the like. So bear with us, and Amy, it'll be all yours.
Great, okay, if you flip to the next slide. So in this section, we've got some of the research findings that are related to consumer behaviour and how that's impacting mobile strategies. So if you just flip to the first chart. So this first slide really illustrates what I was saying a few moments ago about mobile being a key channel for marketers, and how the majority are thinking mobile first now when they're creating content and digital strategies. And that's really driven by what's shown in this chart, that for the vast majority, mobile's playing a significant role in the purchase journeys of their customers. So you can see that year on year, that majority has increased even since last year. So it's now significant for 84% of marketers. And I think in the report, we cite some research from Zenith, which predicts that by next year, consumers will spend an average of 930 hours a year accessing the internet via mobile. And also that mobile will account for 31% of global media consumption. So that's really just cementing its importance as a channel when setting strategies.
Great, thanks, Amy. So let's take the purchase journey that we've seen in the results there, and I'm going to ask a couple of questions now to Sandra from GSK. So we can see, Sandra, I'm sure you're familiar with, that time spent with mobile devices is increasing. It's particularly increased in these this year with the restrictions and home learnings, etc. So how about at GSK? Have you guys seen mobile playing more of a role, let's say, in the purchase journeys for your products over the last 3 to 4 months?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I wasn't really surprised when I saw these results. I think this is reflective of what we're seeing. I guess the only surprise was the 1% who strongly disagreed. I wondered what sector they possibly could be in to have that result. But yeah, it's absolutely what we've seen. And mobile has been a focus for GSK for a number of years. We know that our consumers like to spend time on a mobile device, browsing our products, particularly in that consideration stage, but definitely, you know, at all stages. And I think in particular, we've seen an increase towards those end stages where people are thinking about where are they going to purchase this product, either online or whether it's in an offline environment. I think for us, we often talk about mobile first anyway. It's something that we were doing pre-COVID, because we do amazing TV ads and great assets that tell amazing stories. But sometimes what you miss in digital is how you kind of transfer that to digital assets in mobile. And so why we say mobile first is when we're thinking about the audience we're trying to reach, we're thinking about the strategy, we're thinking about the nuances of that channel that has to come all the way through. And that's the reason why I mentioned at the beginning about my new role in the ecosystem, because it has to play a part. So yeah, I think over COVID, you know, as I say, we've seen that increase, people searching for things like symptoms, people obviously going onto our sites and looking for content and advice like that. That's definitely been an area we've seen a lot more activity. But I think we wanted to act quickly, but also appropriately, because whilst obviously people are on search and looking for symptoms on their mobile, it's also just making sure that we are giving the best and the right advice. And I think that was something that GSK took a really strong perspective on, and also just being mindful of the uncertainty of the situation. So absolutely, we again saw lots of people at the end of the purchase journey looking to buy our products, but you saw, as we all did, the stockpiling. And so it's difficult to understand how much of this is normal behavior versus, you know, what is just because of what we've seen in COVID. So I guess ultimately we've learned a lot from these consumers, and we're definitely going to take some of those kind of learnings through. So yeah, I mean, mobile, I think, you know, will continue for the rest of this year and into the new normal to play a really important part for us.
Great, thanks, Sandra. And we'll talk a little bit about sort of e-commerce and m-commerce just in a few more minutes. So, so great, Amy, on to the next finding, please.
Yeah, so this second chart shows the consumer behaviours that typically involve mobile devices that marketers think will have the most significance for them over the next year. So in the dark blue there, you've got the 2020 results, and they're compared to the 2019 results in light blue. And you can see that watching video has moved to the top of the pile this year, followed by, as Chris just said, mobile payments and m-commerce, both really important. Obviously this year, given widespread lockdowns, people shopping more online, they've really increased in prominence. But I think that watching video piece, it's social platforms like Instagram, TikTok, they're increasingly monetizing their offerings via video. And I think this will only increase. This year's really been a step change in global video viewing habits. Consumers are seeking access to kind of really diverse content throughout the day on their mobiles, and so that watching video moving to the top of the pile is a really key one for this year, and I think will continue on to next year as well.
Great. Okay, so let's take that one then, Sandra, in terms of mobile video and what consumers have been doing. So, you know, have you been responding to this use, certainly on the mobile, the time watching video on mobile? Is this something you're incorporating into your strategy? I think you touched on it with the when you responded to the first question, but maybe if you give us a bit more insight into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, we definitely saw that increase in video. I think it was something that we all experienced as consumers anyway, whether it was looking at news sites or TikTok or kind of watching Netflix. And I think in EMEA, it was already a strategy this year to double down in video. So I think the great thing for us was that we already had lots of assets ready. We already had lots of plans. So in some cases, it was just about, you know, where we might need to amp that activity up or down. So yeah, definitely saw the trends and definitely wanted to stick with them. I also think from a video perspective, we also wanted to think about what our consumers might want to see from us. And so I've got 2 examples from EMEA about how we responded from a video perspective as well. So the first was in Germany with the brand Voltaren. So we recognised that people couldn't go out to the gym. We recognised they couldn't go and exercise outside, particularly during that really severe lockdown. So we curated loads of content around fitness that people could access via our website, and it was really well received, because obviously people were kind of, you know, understanding that this was really relevant for them. It was the situation that they were in. So that was one thing we looked at, and we looked around the, you know, the content that people were consuming online that might be relevant in that space. The second was for Sensodyne, so a brand that has a strong heritage in dentist recommendation. So we wanted to think about what it might be like for a consumer who can't get to the dentist but might still have some challenges with their teeth. So we created some micro videos from dentists giving best practice advice about what to do while you're stuck at home. So I think we both kind of looked at, you know, it from the advertising perspective and how we can make sure we show up in those moments when people need us, but we also, you know, wanted to make sure that we could create content. And again, I think for us, what was important was that we recognised whilst in COVID that we had to do that faster. We had to be much more agile. So that's kind of a process that we want to make sure we continue as we come out of the other side.
Great, thanks, Sandra. Yeah, that's very interesting you say that, because I think when we sit around the EMEA board table and get insights from our marketeers, there's very much been this adoption of speed, agility, things getting to market quicker than they would do in inverted commas previous times, normal times, and then people saying, okay, if we can do this now, how do we keep this for the future so that everything is you know, huge, great quality, but at the same time gets to market quicker. So great to hear that one. Okay, if we can move on then, Amy, to the last slide that we're going to look at from a marketer's perspective, and then I'll come back to you, Sandra.
Yeah, so my final chart in this section shows the types of mobile marketing and advertising that respondents have been focused on this year. And at the start of the webinar, I talked about the strength of programmatic at the moment and how that's driving web display advertising. And this remains the biggest focus in 2020, as it was in 2019 and the year before that. So this chart also shows how gaming's a focus for marketers behind display and search, which tend to be top of this chart. And we added this gaming option to the survey for the first time this year, but it's already been selected by almost a third of marketers. And programmatic's really significant here too. It's becoming increasingly easy to advertise to gamers. Brands can select from familiar formats and buy ads programmatically. I just want to kind of talk about gaming a little bit, because it's one of the, I'll give a shameless plug here to one of our recently released reports, and that's our guide to marketing in the gaming ecosystem, which is some really great insight into understanding the gaming industry and how to plan ads within the gaming world and look at esports and that kind of thing. But I'll stop the ad there, but it's a really interesting read if you're interested. But yeah, this chart just gives that kind of overview of the biggest focuses for this year, and most of those things are driven by this boom in programmatic that I was talking about with web display advertising at the top there.
Okay, thanks, Amy. So it seems that from this chart, you know, certainly, and the period was at the peak of COVID, sort of March, April this year. But, you know, at that time, marketers and their agencies were focusing on, as you can see there, mobile web display, in-app advertising, branded content, and search to some degree. But what we were seeing is that consumers were actually increasing their sort of e-commerce, their m-commerce, and their mobile payments. That's where they were sort of going. So this shift that we saw, which has really gathered pace in the last 6 months, what's the impact on GSK? What are you seeing in terms of, you know, commerce that's going from a non-physical to an electronic or mobile perspective? And do you think, just to follow up to that, do you think this change will be more permanent, or will consumers go back to what they were doing before?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good question about the going back, and I think that's why the topic of new normal is interesting, because I think we're learning all the time, you know, how many of these behaviours that we've adopted are going to stick and what are not. And I guess we all had to change those digital behaviours, whether, you know, people were working at home and having to get used to that, or they were becoming teachers, or in my case, the Monday quiz host. But I think out of all of the things that we kind of had to learn, I think online shopping was the one that was probably the most dramatic, and actually probably one of the most emotional as well, to a certain extent, because there were obviously times all around EMEA that we couldn't get hold of groceries, and obviously we were being told not to leave the house. And it was understandable that I think those infrastructures, so those online retailers, were really struggling, because it was just unprecedented demand that obviously they weren't expecting to have. But I think what's interesting coming out the back of it is that there are lots of consumers that probably didn't have the confidence to buy online, whether that's groceries or other products, and who perhaps wouldn't have used their mobile as a payment device, who suddenly had to do it. So these are people who probably over the next year may have started to adopt those new ways of operating, but had to do it very quickly. So I think, if anything, what we've just seen there is an acceleration. And I think in the UK, we were fairly advanced already in some aspects of that, but in markets like Spain and Italy, that's where you've seen a real significant jump, particularly for GSK, because in some of those markets, groceries and certainly pharmaceuticals are often not bought online. So it's definitely interesting to see that impact of that acceleration. But I also think that retailers themselves have also had to think more carefully about how they manage stock in the future. You know, do brands need to look at more D2C solutions if obviously they're struggling with retailers? I mean, these are all things that we've been thinking about and learning about as we've been going through this world. And I guess luckily for us, we've got a huge e-commerce team. Is an amazing girl, Carly, in my media team, and she's been looking at all of that data. She's been looking at those behaviours. She's been working with the retailers to understand their position and what's happening. And most importantly, she's been working really closely with our media agency to kind of see what we can do in the future to make sure that we're not just future-proofing the next wave, and obviously that may happen, but we're thinking about these consumer changes and how we can adapt to make sure that we're there for them in the future too.
Great, thanks for that. Thanks for that. I did have to take a slight double take there when you said I think you said the Monday Quizmaster. It sort of initially it sounded like mundane Quizmaster, and I thought, well, I don't know.
Quite possibly. If anyone's ever joined one of my quizzes, we had to move them to fortnightly because weekly was definitely getting a little bit too much. But yeah, we all had to do some new things during lockdown, right?
Sure, I think that was a common phenomenon from Quizmania to sort of dropping off a little bit. But anyway, okay, look forward to maybe being part of one of your quizzes later on. Let's move on now to back to Amy. Now we're going to get Kate involved in and an agency perspective on some findings from there. And then we'll come back and Sandra, Kate, Amy and myself will just have another further discussion. And again, I do encourage any Q&A from the audience, please, feel free to pop a question to us and we'll make some time for that. So Kate Walkham, as you know, Global Account Director at so let's move on to the agency perspective then.
Yeah, so in this section, we have some of the research findings that are related to where marketers are putting their budgets, how they're measuring the effectiveness of their marketing on mobile platforms. So if we shift to the first chart. So this is the direct impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on mobile budgets. Like I said at the start, we asked respondents what their budget plans for mobile had been before the crisis and what they were looking like at the time of responding. And 66% said they were planning to increase budgets before COVID, and that went down to 39% after. So basically this year, for the first time since we started this survey, more marketers now expect their mobile budgets to decrease rather than increase. But it's worth pointing out, as I said at the start, the resilience of mobile has been quite strong through this period. It's worth pointing out that despite this increase, this decrease in mobile budgets overall, as a percentage of overall budgets, the allocation to mobile continues to increase year on year. So this year we found that 40% of respondents said they'd allocated over 30% of their overall budgets to mobile, and that proportion has only increased year on year. So yeah, definitely budgets have been impacted, but we're still seeing resilience in mobile budgets specifically.
Great, thanks, Amy. And I do wonder if we were to do this survey or this question right now, maybe as a straw poll, where I think we'd see some very different pieces. But anyway, let's work with what we've got. So, Kate, welcome. Understand from an agency perspective, you maybe won't be able to talk specific clients, but if you can talk about some maybe clients sort of in the round as you see fit. So yeah, so there's the numbers. That's what we've seen from 600 people or so. So what about you guys? Have you seen budget allocations to mobile increasing in the past few years? And the impact on COVID to mobile budgets, has that been to the same extent in terms of any decline compared to other channels? What's the take?
Yeah, certainly, pre-COVID across a lot of our EMEA markets, we were seeing a steady rise, particularly in mobile spend, in line with the general trends of the markets. And then obviously as COVID hit, yes, there was some effect there. I think mobile's advantage has always been that it sort of enables us to target consumers sort of wherever they are and whatever they're doing. So they always have their phone with them sort of 24/7. So in a post-COVID world where daily behaviors are ever changing, and certainly things are much less predictable, mobile then becomes more important than ever for us, because mobile usage remains that constant in our lives, particularly as things sort of continue to change. So, you know, we're working from home, we're not working from home, we're going to the shops, we're not going to the shops. You know, there's a lot of turbulence, but having a mobile in hand is always that sort of one constant of that sort of new life and this normal. So it goes without saying that all spends have taken a hit at varying degrees across all channels throughout COVID, but I really do think that mobile has been the most resilient. A lot of brands have, you know, pulled back on ATL spends, and due to reduced budgets, the general, you know, position we're in with the economy, you know, all these sort of mitigating factors, right? But I really do think that the allure for mobile and online has remained strong. People at home, they're searching, they're gaming, they're shopping, they're generally entertaining themselves and all through their devices. So that's really been paramount for us as an agency, is using that channel to best communicate to our audiences during this time. I think as well, you know, in some of our EMEA markets, I think it was Hungary, we did see most recent spend numbers that had mobile up at an increase of 32% year on year. And I think there was another market, Greece, as well, which was about plus 16%. So this is strongly related to, you know, local clients and the client portfolio and objectives that they have, but it's really significant, I think, when ad revenues are really down across the board globally. So this would suggest that mobile is definitely accelerating, and perhaps although the budgets are coming down, mobile is actually taking a bigger slice of that pie as well. We also had, I think there was a Magna ad from our trading team, a Magna report, and it was just recently in June 2020, which was predicting globally that mobile ad formats are going to have the biggest growth, even over social and video formats. So that was, I think, at around 12%, over 11% social and video. So yeah, super interesting. And to answer your question, yes, we are, you know, we're starting to see mobile become much more prominent.
Great, thanks, Kate. And I think, Amy, the next slide is maybe related to some of that data point.
Yeah, definitely. It was just as an add-on to that about mobile budgets. So yeah, 50% being allocated to mobile video just builds on what we were talking about earlier, with increases in consumer behavior. Streaming on mobile, streaming mobile video has been really important this year. And obviously there's an overlap between those first two options there, mobile video and social, but they're the clear leaders when it comes to mobile budget this year. But this is the first year we've asked this question, so I fully expect kind of next year we'll see that proportion of budget allocated to mobile video growing again. Yeah, and just before you do the next two slides, just maybe if I could interject a point there. I think over the years when we've been doing this survey, we have had some sort of feedback about people asking, well, you know, how do you define mobile? How do you find a mobile budget? Is social, as Amy was just saying there, you know, social video on social, is it mobile video, is it social? So actually, to some extent, we just see that, you know, mobile is the device, it's the enabler, it's less of a channel, you know, as Kate's nodding, you know, is planning done in a way that carves out mobile necessarily. Some people think of mobile as mobile display and, you know, sort of forget everything else that's going on. So it's just, I think it's a sort of indicative rather than a mobile is a separate entity like out of door or TV or radio, which causes some issues with some of our respondents. But anyway, I thought I'd just interject on that. So
I think mobile, just to add to that, Chris, mobile is essentially like your digital strategy these days, right? Per se, you can't. I look at it that way. You know, as Sandra was saying, she's mobile first. It is your digital strategy and the way that you move forward. So I completely agree. I agree with that.
Right, great. We're on the same page on that one. Okay, Amy, if we could just, I think we're going to do 2 slides then, and then I'll ask Kate another question around your findings on the next 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the next two charts are around measurement and effectiveness, and I think part of part of it, this plays into what we were talking about, that mobile is hard to define as its own individual channel, because it is digital now. So we found each year that measurement remains the biggest barrier to the growth of mobile, and that did remain the case this year. But this chart shows the metrics that are being used to measure mobile marketing effectiveness. You can see that the use of those kind of hard business metrics, that's things like ROI and sales and profit, hasn't increased a great deal since 2017. And if you compare that to the use of engagement metrics, things like social sharing and click-through rate continue to be the most used metric, and with year-on-year increases. And like I said, the metrics being used for measurement are presenting barriers to growth. And we found this year an increase in the proportion of respondents who agreed that limited tracking capabilities were limiting their spend on mobile versus desktop. So 47% agreed with that. So it's definitely still a sticking point for marketers, how to measure its effectiveness versus other channels. If you go on to the next slide. I've included this last chart just to show that despite those concerns around measurement, marketers are still very confident that mobile is an effective channel for them. So 40% said mobile devices are very effective, and only 6% said they were ineffective. So it's just about finding the metrics that prove that effectiveness, I think, but it's not preventing budget being put towards the channel, and it's certainly not impacting how effective that marketers are thinking it is.
Great. Okay, so follow on from that, Kate, I think it's pretty obvious. Is mobile measurement a barrier for you and your clients, and how have you guys proved effectiveness for your clients though?
I giggle again with the 2 and the 1% at very ineffective, because I think someone was just out to get us maybe. Yeah, I think measurement is definitely one of the biggest challenges for advertisers, like how to measure, what to measure, short versus long term. There's so many metrics there that you can be measuring. And then also, whilst it's great to sort of look at clicks and impressions, but what does that really mean in terms of how your business is performing? So I think one of the reasons we have this future-proof dynamic really at is to understand our audience's objectives, and find out our clients' objectives as well, and really find a way to strike that right balance between, what do you need to achieve from your short-term metrics versus your long-term. I think marketers are always looking for proven delivery. But additionally, there's like real challenges today as well when we go beyond simple metrics too. So things like screen size, creative fit to form, functioning ad products, brand safety, brand responsibility. It all highlights a bit of a loss of control because there's so many variables that you have there, which then compounds that challenge around metrics as well, just purely because there's just sometimes far too many options, right? So I think while there's those challenges around the measurement concerns, I think overall it's not a barrier. Our clients know that this is where their user base is. They know that, this is where they are most of the day, and that sometimes tends to outweigh any of the pitfalls that might be there in regards to challenges to manage, challenges to measurement. So, mobile, we know, is that one key anytime, anywhere source of payment and information. And it's one of the most important places that you can be in terms of advertising to really target your desired audience. And then I think you talked about engagement. I think engagement has really become a key, measurement of effectiveness. We can't automatically assume that every ad that we have is magically going to drive to sale, but we have to have that gentle massage down the funnel, right? So we have to engage first and foremost in a meaningful and non-obtrusive way. We have to be a help, thinking about Sandra's Sensodyne idea as well. And how do you get your audience to spend longer with you? Like and share us, and those kinds of things are really important. I think because you don't want to be annoying or disruptive, particularly during these times, and that's just what people are going to put up their guard, put their ad blockers on, and they won't want to have anything to do with us at all. So I think driving that engagement through great creative as well, and great ideas and great thinking driven by data, I think that's definitely the way to make our industry and better and much more enjoyable, and have those personal and interactive experiences. So yeah.
Great. And maybe again, if I can just add to that, to give the audience listening in some sort of further points that the MMA can provide. So we spent millions of dollars on a piece of research that we called SMOX, which was showing without any doubt the optimum share going to mobile channels and which type of mobile channels will have the best effect on sales. And we did that with companies like Walmart, which is the owner of Asda, and Coca-Cola, and various other channels. So there's that data as well. But at the same time, just now, I think you touched on it there, Kate, as well, that one of the internal challenges our marketers tell us is that there's this sort of budget allocation, forget mobile, about what goes into performance marketing and what goes into brand marketing, and some delegation between the two. And the reality is that the performance marketing sometimes gets an easier sell internal and an easier sign off, whereas brand, it's like, well, when are we going to see the return? What does it mean? Type challenge. So not this year, because it's a sort of longer term effect, but we will be sharing some research that shows the effect of, it's almost brand as performance, BAP as we call it, so that ability to show brand effect and what it has on sales can help marketers in those discussions. And I think it's not in this particular report, but what we've seen about brands and brands coming through stronger, brand purpose and brand behaviors being somewhat stronger in this period of lockdown has really helped those brands, and we'll see later if they outperform others. So that was just a little adjunct to me. I did just want to move on. So thanks, Amy, for that piece of on the research there. And I just wanted to move a bit from sort of mobile and budget allocation to one of the areas that mobile really has success in, and that is in innovation. And so my question, I think, to you, Kate, is that the number of clients you've worked with, or the sectors you've maybe worked with or worked in, are you seeing particular innovation when it comes to mobile, and any sort of maybe there are a couple of examples that might stand out for you?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some great innovation, I think, particularly during COVID. It's been like a hotbed of innovation, because businesses have really had to rethink the way that they do their digital marketing, and they have to keep people engaged and really be innovative at the way they're looking at that. I think food and beverage, for me, has become much more innovative during COVID. That sort of big blockbuster, comms is still important, but they need to really engage their audiences to keep that that relationship and that engagement going on. So I'll say, before I kick off this one company brand that I want to talk about, who would have thought that QR codes would have made a comeback during COVID, right? Because there's just been this complete resurgence, and I think it was almost a bit of like a redundant innovation, but that it's just come to the fore. And I would have to call out one brand that stands out to me throughout COVID is Burger King. I think they've absolutely been killing it with how innovative that they've been, particularly in their innovative use of mobile. And I would say they've been a little bit of the champions of COVID, actually. I'm always banging on about them to my clients. So I really think that they have a really strong mobile engagement strategy that is subsequently really driving more people to their app. And really giving them, greater first-party data, and in the end, I imagine, generating much more insight into how they can connect with their audiences. So I think there was a couple of examples. They had they had a TV spot which had a floating QR code on the TV spot, and if you were quick enough to whip your mobile out, you could catch that QR code on your phone, and you could then go to the Burger King app and unlock a free burger for delivery. You then had other things where they were rewarding students at home by asking them to solve algebra questions in order to lock a promo code for a free burger, all ordered through, the Burger King app. I think there was another one in Brazil where they were encouraging people to stay indoors, and that was thanks to unlocking geolocation on your phone inside the Burger King app. They could then make sure that you were staying at home, and then reward you with vouchers and prizes just for staying at home. So I think these are all really amazing, examples of sort of innovation, and a brand that's done it really, really well. Particularly during COVID, they've taken that opportunity to sort of, drive downloads of their app and really get their first party data in order. So I think that they've been really, really smart.
Great, thanks for those. I hadn't come across those, so I'll maybe go down and get have a look at those and maybe get them entered into our Smarties Awards or something. So thanks for that. Thanks, Amy, for those insights, and then Kate and Sandra for bringing them to life. We're now just going to let's have a couple of a discussion on some more, if you like, general points as we finish off. And if anybody, as say in the audience, wants to ask a question, then feel free through the Q&A. So let's just talk, maybe Sandra, if I come back to you now for a moment or two, just talk about digital transformation. What does that really mean for marketing and marketers? And without wanting to lead the witness, conversations I've had again with marketers, there's talk of personalization or rationalization, people centricity, choice. So yeah, what does it mean, digital transformation now?
Well, I mean, I think it means so many different things to so many different people. I think that's kind of probably half the challenge, isn't it? And I think if you're about to embark on a digital transformation strategy, I think getting that objective very clear is so important before you start to then look at your internal capabilities, or if you need to bring in external help. So I think for me, the one word that I hear a lot, and it's become really important to me recently, is agility in digital transformation. Because I think most organizations have great people and they've got good tech. It's normally the organizational infrastructure that lets them down, and it's the processes that we create for ourselves that kind of make it much harder for us to get the job done. So for us at GSK, Agile is actually one of our marketing attributes. It's one of the things that we kind of live by when we're in marketing. And I think one of the challenges with that area is that I think the misconception, because it comes from a tech world, is it's quite a techie kind of thing to do, that it just means being fast, or it just means throwing all your planning out the window. Whereas I see Agile as being transformational and being collaborative and kind of doing small iterative changes over time, rather than trying to do like an overnight haul. Because anyone who can say they can become agile or transform a business overnight is deluded at best. But it was interesting, there was a report earlier this year from Merkel in Q2, so during COVID, that said that 89% of marketers are thinking the same thing about wanting to bring more agility into their organization. So not necessarily changing everything, but just kind of making those small changes that make their lives better. And let's face it, during COVID, I mean, we've all had to be agile and try those new ways of working. I think for me though, the thing that I most like about digital transformation when it works, and particularly agile when it works, is it puts people over process. So it remembers that actually if you can get the right people and the right training and they're working in the right way, that will help your business to transform from a digital perspective, rather than, like I say, bringing in a whole new company to figure it out, or a whole new piece of tech. And I would also say your people in your business, but also your consumers as well. So thinking about what is it that they're looking for, and how can you transform their lives through the work that you're doing.
Great. Thanks, Sandra. And Kate, something you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Sandra, I completely echo that. For us, we help a lot of clients with their digital transformation journeys. And I think in this COVID period as well, it's been in complete overdrive and acceleration. But what we've had to do is really shift gears and really be agile. And we really have to focus on personalization as well. So that's all part of what we're doing at the moment. So it's really, I think, for us, about being audience at the heart, driven by that sort of data and understanding as part of the digital transformation journey. And then also, as to your point, Sandra, looking at people and making sure that process is right as well, because there is a human touch to all of this as well, making sure that we have the right human drive, the right human insight to really be able to navigate and drive that digital transformation. So yeah, I echo your thoughts 100% there, Sandra.
Yeah, great. Okay, and I'm just going to move on to one other area that you've sort of touched on a little bit already, but maybe we can get a little more detail on it. Is that the behaviours that you've been tracking, through the data insights that you're getting into your organisations, have therefore shown quite dramatic shifts in consumer behaviours. Yeah, things people are doing either more of or doing now that they wouldn't have done necessarily have done before. So let's just talk about some of those, and either what things that you're seeing that you haven't already talked about, and do you think that those sort of behaviors are here to stay? Because if they're here to stay, your business and your how you face your business and how you put your business together and how you interact with those consumers becomes even more important. So yeah, consumer behavior changes. What have you seen? What's here to stay? How are you adapting? Any and each and every one of those will be good. Oh, sorry, it was to both of you, so I didn't say. Sandra, do you want to just as Kate just spoke on the last one, do you want to kick off and then we'll come to you, Kate? Maybe not. Okay, Kate, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm currently on quarantine, right? And I know that my behaviors have totally changed. In the past, I never used to order clothes online because I was always worried that when I got them, they wouldn't fit me, and then I didn't want to deal with the hassle of sending them back. But my behaviors have completely changed. I'm now ordering my food online, getting the grocery shop, you know, all of that is happening. So I think there's been sort of seismic sort of shifts, you know, stimulated by COVID and creating those consumer behavior changes. And I think there's, you know, some shifts that have done really bad, really not really bad. I think there's some shifts that have been a challenge, and then there's some shifts that have actually been really good for some of our clients. So, you know, you could look at two clients that may have had challenges, Emirates and GoPro, obviously because of, you know, travel is severely restricted, and that's sort of like their bread, life and butter, right? So, you know, they're really strong brands. They're going through the challenge now, but then we will, and we've already started to sort of build them back up as you know, consumer behavior changes. But on the flip, you have, you know, companies like, you know, pharmaceuticals at J&J. You have the Just Eat takeaway business, which is one of the strongest food delivery companies across EMEA, and I would say the globe. And here there's a change in consumer behavior as well. So, which has also been a massive benefit to their business. So in particular for food delivery, you're seeing the frequency of your orders go up for your existing, you know, your existing customers that you would never have seen before. But then you're also seeing older consumers, you know, in that uptake as well, particularly we saw in markets like Italy. So there's real shifts changing, and I think that's really important. And I don't think it's just a flash in a pan. I think people have really digitized their lives, and the level of service that people are getting today, they're actually expecting that, I think, again into the future. And I don't think, it's hard to say how much change there will be, but I think it is really imperative that the companies are taking on the learnings from now and everything that's going on, and then applying that to their future to really future-proof their roadmap for their business.
Right, great. And I wondered, Amy, you know, whether it's in one of your other reports or even anything in this report, maybe in terms of consumer behavior changes that are significant. I think you referenced gaming before, and maybe gamification, not just gamers. I just wondered if you've got some insight or perspective on that.
Well, what I was going to say actually is that I think to Sandra's point earlier on when we were discussing, she kind of said that you don't know the speed at which consumer behaviours have changed this year, and how much they kind of swing backwards and forwards. You don't know which consumer behaviours are actually kind of not real, but are going to stay and are worth kind of building on for the future strategy. So I think that's a key point as well. Kind of this year, consumer behaviour has changed, and attitudes as well have changed so quickly and so rapidly. We found that in our we did a piece of research with strategists called our Future Strategy Report, and strategists were finding that they were spending kind of 90% of their time at the moment just trying to keep up with changes in consumer attitudes and behaviours and relay that to their clients, and then to be able to build on that this year and actually put some strategy behind it has been really difficult because things change so quickly. And I mean, we've seen just in the last week in the UK the potential of another lockdown, and so I think that's been a really clear point that's come through our research this year is how the pace of change, and how to Kate's point, how agile brands are having to be to kind of respond, but also respond in the right way and not respond in a way that's going to damage attitudes towards the brand, because it's a really fine line at the moment, and you've got so many different perspectives and attitudes towards what's going on, that I think that's the hard line to tread. But in terms of general consumer behaviours that I think will stick around, yes, like I said earlier, gaming is definitely one of them that we're writing quite a lot about at the moment. You know, partnerships between brands and gaming platforms and gamification on social media and that kind of thing, and that's definitely driven by the increased time people are spending online this year. But it's becoming, the innovation around that in that category is massive, and I think that's presenting some really great opportunities for brands at the moment. Yeah,
I think it's becoming a hugely competitive space, isn't it? Trying to get share of minds or share of thumbs and the like. So thanks for that, Amy. Thanks, Kate, and thanks, Sandra. Thanks to all our panelists for today's insights and today's discussion. We're just going to move on now to, I think I promised you earlier on that we would share the URL where you'll be able to find the whole report, and I'll just let you know what we've got coming up. So yeah, so thank you, panelists. It's been great and it's been very helpful. I hope it's been helpful to the audience that we've got here. We will be doing this again in terms of MMA EMEA webinars. I'd like to share with you some webinars that we've got coming up. Next week, next Wednesday, we do have a conversation with AppsFlyer, giving you insights into everything you need to know about iOS 14 and the like, and the changes and how that may affect app marketing. And then a week after that, yeah, on the 7th of October, we then have the SaaS Institute, and we're changing our perspective a little bit into, well, very much into AI and how has AI helped marketers during COVID, during this period, which we didn't discuss today. Over and above that, while I'm just doing some webinars coming up, some of you will be very familiar that this week is the Demexco conference. That is a virtual conference. It's a global conference, and our MMA Germany team and myself at the MMA and EMEA, we're official partners there. So we've got 4 different webinars that we're running over the next 2 days, as in Wednesday and Thursday. Again, you can find that by coming to our website. So in terms of this report, you can find that on our website here. It's mmaglobal.com. It's pretty much who we are and what we do /education. That's where we'll get the report that we've looked at today. And if you go on to mmaglobal.com/webinars, that's where you'll see our upcoming webinars, including the 4 that we have at Demexco. I'm doing a fireside chat with CMO Keith Moore from Camelot, and Greg Stewart, our CEO, is doing a fireside chat with Deborah Wall, who is Group CMO for General Motors and Chair of MMA Global. So, and then we've got a couple of masterclasses, one on mobile creativity and another on mobile first strategies. So a lot going on. Thank you for your time today. We'll just now sign off, and I think we're going to finish like 1 or 2 minutes earlier, so you can sort yourself out before you get onto your next Zoom call and the like. So thank you for attending today. This has been an MMA EMEA webinar. There is no new normal. We've got more content and subjects to come on that in the next couple of weeks, as I've just shown you there. If you do think you have a senior executive who would like to take part in one of these webinars, then do let us know. And in terms of joining the MMA, please, there's an email address there that you can contact us, and we will take it from there. So without further ado, thank you all very much for attending. It's been as a live YouTube, as I've said, for this, there's a recording that we can also share with you, and there's the actual report that you can look at into more detail. We will see you at the next one. So thanks again, final time. Thanks very much to our panelists. Thanks very much to you for listening, for attending, and for watching. And we will see you next time. Bye now.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, bye.
Bye, Kate. Bye, Amy. Thanks, Sandra.